Hey, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be drawing Dugon. Going to be, of course, doing the sketch first, and then today I'm going to be using Paint in Procreate. And most of the time I use Procreate. Like, I don't really use any other drawing apps at all, just because I'm so used to Procreate now. I've been using it for a while. For the sketch, I use the Peppermint. Is it Peppermint or Papermint? One of the two. One of the default brushes. I use all the default brushes right now. I don't actually use any like custom brushes. The only thing I customize is like the opacity and then also the size of the brush that I'm using. But yeah, today I'm actually going to be talking about self-love, because it's something that I've struggled with, and I think a lot of people possibly struggle with. I assume that most people are like me, but you never really know. But yeah, so I'm going to be talking about this because it's something that I didn't have for myself for a long time. I didn't really know who I was as a person for a long time, and even to this day I don't really know, but I have a better idea of who I am as a person. But yeah, I'm just going to be talking a little bit about kind of what my journey was and how I kind of got to the point where I am now, where I can at least say that I know I love myself now, and I'm getting to that point of, starting to realize who I am and what I offer as a person. So I guess the first instance, I'm gonna go way back in time to 2000 and maybe 2007, 2008ish. It was right before I went to high school for the first time, and honestly, like, that was the first time I remember myself being cognizant or being aware of me, like, of me actually having like actual thoughts and feelings and all that. And most likely I had thoughts and feelings before that, but it's just the first time I remember. I was maybe what, 7th, 8th grade is when I was, 2007, 2008. So for me, I started being more attracted to girls and all that stuff. And then I started realizing who I was as a person, who I wanted to be. I started to try to impress women and all that. And that's when I started realizing that, or I started thinking the seed had been planted at that time of me not being good enough to, get a woman or to attract a woman. Or at that time, it wasn't even a woman, it was girls. It was girls my age, 13, 14. But yeah, so with me actually becoming more aware of myself, more aware of women, that's when I really started thinking that that's when the negative self-talk really started happening. And it's something that I think everybody has to deal with. I guess I kind of touched on this in my previous video, kind of about that thin line between like self-love or self-awareness and self-hatred. And I guess this is kind of feedback. I didn't even think about that until I started recording this and I started talking. Yeah, that's 4 minutes in. So I apologize for it being so similar to the previous video, but it's something I wanted to expand on because it's two sides of the same coin, where self-love it's really a difficult thing to implement into your life. Well, for some, for me, I let me talk for myself here. For me, it's something that was hard to implement, just because I just never thought of myself as being and this is gonna sound bad, and trust me, it sounds worse than what it is, but I didn't think that I was a likable or lovable guy. And it's something that I had to start realizing that, maybe maybe I, as I've grown up, especially in my early to mid 20s, and now I'm 31. So, now I'm at a point where, I love myself no matter what, no matter what the external validation is. And, I finally got to that point in my 30s. But, it's never too late. So, but yeah, so middle school, it was that awareness where, okay, I got to be likable. That was really the thing. I wanted to be likable from other people. That was the whole point of me trying to start molding myself, because what I did at this point, and maybe everybody does this, but for me, I especially noticed it when I started like girls in middle school, where I started to try to mold myself and try to fit into the norm. And I shouldn't say fit into the norm, but I just wanted to be liked by people. That was my whole thing. And so I was a people pleaser for a long time. If I guess that's the long and short of it. Where, and it got to a point. Maybe I should follow this chronologically. I'm thinking about this real time when I'm recording this. Maybe I should follow this, chronologically. So middle school, I was, like I said, I was still kind of figuring out myself. I really wasn't aware of who I was as a person. And so, I played basketball. That was my favorite sport growing up. Also baseball. I love baseball. Baseball, basketball were my two favorite sports. I quit baseball because I believe that in high school, or no, middle school, they didn't have a baseball team. And then, so I kind of just dropped it out of my curriculum. I think I would still play it here and there. But man, I wish I would have stayed with baseball, because baseball is honestly, like I said, one of my favorite sports. But I stuck with basketball. I tried football. I want to say in 7th or 8th grade. I only did one semester of it, and I was like, nope, I don't like getting hit. I was running back and wide receiver, and at that time I was tall, but I was real skinny. Not that I'm not skinny now, but I was skinnier. I'm like 190 now, and I was tall. But at that time I was maybe like a $140, buck 50, maybe not even that, maybe like a $130, to be honest, like soaking wet. So yeah, football hurt. I didn't like hitting people, and I didn't like people hitting me. And then there was this one player. What was his name, man? I don't want to say his name. Actually, you know what? No, I'm gonna say his name. His name was I believe it was Keegan, is what his name was. It was a white dude, and he was a big, muscly dude. Looked like he was in his 20s already. Looked like he already went to college, but he hit hard as fuck. And and I remember I had to, the football drills or whatever, and we had to face off or whatever to try to, make the other person, not knock them on their butt, pretty much is what we had to do. So, me and him, we lined up, and we were the same height, but we damn sure weren't the same weight. So he knocked me on my butt so many times, but I guess it made me stronger. I'm not dead. It did hurt, but the good thing about Keegan, we were friends, and he, or at least I thought we were friends, and he would help me back up on my feet whenever he would knock anybody down, or help anybody up, not just me, but he would help anybody back up whenever he would knock them down, because he would, a lot of times, like I said, win, because he was just so big. But I believe he was a tight end, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so he was a muscly dude, and cool dude though. I liked him. He was a cool dude. I wanted to be like him, to be honest. But yeah. So one thing that I did, and that I'll kind of talk about as I go through the story of me talking about my, my journey of self-love and all that, is, I was always like secretly a nerd. So I didn't want people to know I was a nerd. So I loved anime at the time, before it became cool. I loved anime, loved Dragon Ball Z, loved Pokemon, loved, all the animes you could think about at that time. and love comic books. I love science. I love math. It's just that I didn't want people to know this. So in school, I would a lot of times I would skip class and try to be the quote unquote cool guy, and I was a class clown. Everybody, I'll make everybody laugh and all that, make all the girls laugh, and that was kind of my you know my way of trying to make it seem like I wasn't a nerd. And something I guess I kind of realized later on is that in order to be a funny person, you got to be pretty intelligent and you got to be witty. And I didn't know that until as I grew up, like in my 20s, mid 20s, late 20s. Now I'm in my early 30s, and I just hit me where I was like, one day I forget when it was, but yeah, I was like, oh, I got to be pretty intelligent in order to be funny, and maybe that's why people are attracted to, laughter, because they realize that people have to be witty, people have to be intelligent in order to do so. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. So yeah, I would hide my nerdiness, and I would try to fit the mold of what girls liked at the time. I would try to be the bad boy. And at this time, keep in mind that this is when we as kids, 2007, 2008, we were wearing baggy clothes. So I would wear the oversized T-shirt like Soldier Boy in the what was it, Superman video, whatever it was. I would just imagine him a little bit taller, same weight, and then wearing those baggy ass clothes. That was me in 7th and 8th grade, and I thought it was cool. And yeah, so I did that for I tried to be the bad boy, try to be cool, and didn't realize how dumb I looked, until later on in life. But you live and you learn. It is what it is. So I guess fast forward a little bit, going to freshman year in high school. That's when I guess that's when the real self discovery really started happening. And in high school, I made so many mistakes, like in terms of just what I was doing and what I thought was important and what was just misconstrued and everything, because I ended up dropping out of high school, and this is kind of skipping forward, but I ended up dropping out of high school and getting a GED in 2012. And but I'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, so freshman year of high school, ended up having a girlfriend, kind of normal stuff, nothing too major. It only lasted a few months. None of my relationships lasted more than a few months. And it's because something I realized is that I was a selfish person. Even now, I'm still a selfish individual. And what I mean by that, when I mean by selfish, I don't mean that I don't care about other people. It's just that I notice how much I don't really need other people. If that makes sense. So, I know I need people in the traditional sense of like we all need each other. I know that we all need each other. We are human. But I'm talking about specifically, like, I just don't need anybody to be with me, So yeah. So throughout freshman year, I pretty much was just all about girls throughout the time. Making girls laugh, talking to girls, trying to get a girlfriend, all that stuff. That was my whole freshman year. So, and I started falling behind in school early, like even in 7th and 8th grade, like I was falling behind and going into, I don't know how the hell I made it into freshman year, but I did somehow, but teachers liked me because I was real good at talking with teachers and, just being around them and making them laugh and, kind of being like a semi teacher's pet. I wasn't a teacher's pet in terms of like I was tattling on people or anything like that, but I would go into classrooms when I didn't want to be around other people, and they would just let me sit there and just do whatever. Like I would help them grade papers and all that, and it's fun times. So I had the makings of a nerd, semi nerd, but I just never became that guy, and because I didn't think it was cool. And so I guess fast forward in a little bit because that's pretty much what I did from freshman year until sophomore year into junior year, and then junior year, at the end of junior year, I ended up getting called into the counselor's office, and they ended up telling me that I wasn't going to be able to graduate on time the next year. So I forget her name, my counselor's name, but she was a junior what do you call it, junior counselor for the students in the school, and she liked me because I was always very I was a very likable guy. Like it wasn't hard to like me, but it's just that I didn't like me. That was the thing. So so I ended up or the counselor ended up calling me into our office in junior year and called me and my dad. I was living with my dad at the time, and ended up telling us that, hey, we see that you don't have enough credits, in order to graduate coming up. You're falling behind, blah blah blah. But they had a program where you would sit at a computer, it's self-paced, and you would sit there for however many class periods. I think it was like, for me, depending on how far you were behind, I think for me it was like 3 or 4, and you would end up just making up your work, and doing your work at a self-pace. But yeah, so they ended up putting me in that for senior year, or enrolling me into those few courses for senior year. I think it was math. Was it math, reading and writing, science? I forget what it is, but it was something that I knew how to do. I just wasn't doing. It was one of those things, which is dumb. It's a dumb thing to do. So yeah, so I ended up doing that. So going into senior year now, summer passed, blah blah blah, and ended up going to this class. There was a girl that was one of the friends of the girl I liked. It was my quote unquote best friend at the time, and I say quote unquote best friend because they weren't really my friend like that. But there was somebody to hang around. So I wouldn't be an outcast. And so yeah, so I ended up being in those few courses. But like I said, it was this girl, and we would just laugh and talk back and forth, blah blah blah, throughout the class. And the teacher didn't like it, the instructor didn't like it, and tried to separate us. But it didn't really stop us from anything. And so yeah, I didn't get a lot accomplished. And then finally, at the end of senior year, my senior counselor, ended up calling me into their office. And most of my teachers were women. There are a couple of male teachers, but for the most part, they're all female. And anyways, counselor ended up calling me into her office, me and my dad, saying, "Hey, you're not able to graduate. So you're gonna have to have an extra year of high school." I was like, "Oh hell no!" That's what I was thinking. I don't want to be embarrassed. Like I said, I thought a lot about what other people thought about me at this point. Like I said, it wasn't about self-love. It was about external validation, external love. That's what it was all about for me. So me and my dad ended up coming to the conclusion that, okay, I don't want to be embarrassed, so I'm going to go ahead and drop out and get my GED. Well, I dropped out. Unfortunately, got kicked out of my dad's house. Went to go live with my mom, and within about 2 weeks of me dropping out of high school, I ended up getting my GED. And that's when I really realized that I was smart enough to be whatever I wanted to be, honestly. It's just that I didn't apply myself enough. And so yeah, I ended up getting my GED and all that, and I got it quick, and I got some high scores too, and it was amazing. And then I went to a Gary Job Corps is where I went to, out in San Marcos, Texas, and I went to go get do our office administration. What do you call it? Office administration trade is what it was. And they had an HVAC technician trade. They had a CMA, certified medical assistant, certified nursing assistant trade, and all that stuff. But I wanted to just do office administration. I did do CNA, certified medical or nursing assistant for like a little bit, but I ended up dropping out of Gary Job Corps also. It ended up just graduating with office administration, even though I could have got two trades. So I'm actually coming up to the end of this video, but that's kind of the story of, throughout my educational background, kind of what happened there, and and then I guess to end this off, in my 20s, my early to mid 20s is when I really started realizing, I started self-reflecting that, all this time I've been looking for external validation. I wanted it so much that I was sacrificing myself in order to get external validation. So early to mid 20s, that's when I started. I don't know exactly when it was. Maybe it was like 23, 24, somewhere around that, when I started becoming self-aware and I started learning that, I didn't, I wasn't putting myself first. So yeah, now I'm at a point where I mostly put myself first and I put my own happiness, and I take care of myself now. So mentally, physically, emotionally, all that stuff, and I make sure that I'm good when it comes to anything. And I try not to let anything affect that. And for the most part, I don't let anything affect it. There are some times, of course, where I slip up and things do affect me, but for the most part, I don't allow things to affect who I am as a person, and also don't let it affect how I treat other people. If somebody treats me bad one day or whatever, I don't put down another person. So I'm pretty, or at least I try to be pretty solid. I think I'm pretty solid when it comes to that type of stuff. So I think self-love, like loving thyself, as I haven't read the Bible, but as I would assume the Bible would say, love thyself. So I'm gonna go ahead and end this off. But that's kind of my story of just loving myself and going through your journey of discovering, love yourself as well.